We're live?
We're live, I
All
believe.
right.
All right, David Bailey, welcome to the Magic Internet Money Podcast. We
Brad, thanks for having me on.
yes, you're welcome. We just met recently at Satoshi Roundtable in Dubai, and we're kind of thinking, have we met before that? I don't think we have met before that in real life, but we've been hanging around a lot in different channels and in Bitcoin. So definitely glad to have you finally on the podcast.
Yeah. And since this is our first false start on this podcast, I definitely haven't already done my hype reel for you, but
Don't
I'm a
worry
big
about that.
fan. I'm a big fan of Brad's. He brings a lot of positive energy to our space, pushing forward Bitcoin projects, Bitcoin companies, doomed ideas, all the above. I've really enjoyed getting to collaborate with you on some stuff, and thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, man. So thank you. And obviously, I wanted to have you on the show because you've turned into kind of like one of the biggest drivers of Bitcoin culture and your whole empire of Bitcoin
Please,
magazine and
please
and
don't
uh
say that. Please don't say that. But
well, it's funny because this is going somewhere because probably like 3 years ago. I mean, we were hanging out in chat rooms, certain like groups, chats and stuff like that together. Was aware of you, but I didn't really know that you were so much of like a Bitcoin evangelist, sort of Bitcoin only type of maximalist or whatever you want to call it. And I just kind of thought you were like an early Bitcoiner that was interested in lots of different things. And so then, I've kind of went through the grinder myself during like 2017, 18, 19 during the bull market and the bear market of the last cycle, and I learned a lot, and I had a front row seat to a lot of the scams that were happening, a lot of the just unethical kind of griftiness, because I worked at a crypto fund in 2017 and was on the investment committee, and I saw like
which
80
one?
ICOs. It was Alphabet.
Alphabet. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember. Cool.
So I was like working very closely in the crypto scene during that time. I was like a Bitcoin guy, but I'm like, maybe this is innovation. Maybe there's a new type of venture capital. Maybe the blockchain can be used for tracking cows or whatever
Yeah.
packages you want all over
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
And maybe that's worth billions of dollars. So I kind of naively thought that I was part of some financial innovation thing at the time, and then got a front row seat to see how this was pretty much just like recreating Wall Street, boiler room pump and dumps, and a lot of FOMO and just lots of manipulation and scammy practices that were happening where people were just paying millions of dollars to get listed on Binance and dump all their pre-sale on everybody. So it kind of gave me a front row seat to the industry and made me realize like, well, this is actually like why I got into Bitcoin in the first place, because of the problems with Wall Street and how unfair everything is. And the banking system kind of seems a bit like a big fraudulent scam. And I wanted to I found Bitcoin, and I wanted to educate my friends and family about, how Bitcoin is your exit vote, like stop wasting all your time arguing about politics and just vote with your fiat and like choose Bitcoin. That should be your new political party type of thing. But all this rant is to get to the point of, I wanted to hear kind of what your journey's been like to get you from the point where when you got into Bitcoin, how did you handle that whole 2017, 18, 19 bubble? And then is that what caused you to become like focused so much on Bitcoin Magazine, investing in Bitcoin companies, and really trying to push forward Bitcoin culture and Bitcoin and support Bitcoin entrepreneurs? Because it's been
Yeah.
very impressive watching your growth over this last cycle. So I
Thank
want to
you.
hear the whole story.
Yeah, no, I mean, so absolutely, this has been an intellectual journey. I'm not a galaxy brain genius. Invent the Bitcoin white paper type of guy. Um, Most things I've learned through failure. Oftentimes I think I know something, and to think you know something and to really know something are two different things. But yeah, I got started in Bitcoin when I was in college. Bought my first Bitcoin in 2012. I was a Ron Paul Bitcoiner, so I
Oh,
came
nice.
from the libertarian Austrian economics, free market worldview, and Bitcoin has always been near and dear to my heart. In fact, I was focused on Bitcoin when the first kind of, let's say, children of Bitcoin started to spring up. So, um, uh, Mastercoin and MadeSafe and the 2013 basket of stuff that came about. I was, skeptical of these things. Like I wasn't, let's just say, a fast follower on these things, and but I had plenty of friends that did, and so I was exposed to it, and I kind of got a little bit of a taste of how it worked, but not much. Um, Came 2015, and I don't know if you were around and remember like the enterprise blockchain
Yes.
moment. Yeah,
Yes.
so blockchain, not Bitcoin, and I was um, uh, I wasn't wise enough to know that that was doomed to failure. What I saw was like, okay, these are the biggest corporations in the world. These were, the most well-known names on Wall Street, Blythe Masters, etc. These are the institutions that clear, equities, talking about, 5-day settlement times or 3-day settlement times, and talking about what seems like really true problems. And so I was, part of this enterprise blockchain moment. We even had a media company we started called Distributed that was talking about blockchain applications for business. And it took several years of watching proof of concept after proof of concept after proof of concept fail. Not just like lots of them fail, all of them fail. Literally, like by the time that we were kind of in year 3 of Distributed, it's like you're looking around and you're like nothing has worked. Like, why has nothing worked? That was a pretty eye-opening experience. And then, come 2016, uh, the first ICOs are happening, and I had bought
Yeah.
Bitcoin Magazine from Vitalik and Mihai back in, I guess, the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. So, even though I wasn't like part of the Ethereum team, I was very close to it, and so I was watching it with great interest.
Mm-hmm.
And when the first ICOs started happening, some of my friends were like the first people to do them. So Joey Krug and Jeremy
Gardner.
Gardner, yeah, sorry. Jeremy, if you see this, I'm sorry, I blinked on your last name. But so Jeremy Gardner did Augur, and I mean, these were guys I was hanging out with at conferences. Like, okay, if they are able to do an ICO, like, why can't we do an ICO? And so, we still very much had this like mindset that this is like all an experiment. This is all a child of Bitcoin. Like there really wasn't this factionalism that had truly developed at this time. Like Ethereum wasn't even seen in the same basket as Bitcoin. It was truly seen as kind of a child of it. So we basically took an idea called proof of existence, which was a Bitcoin idea where you could basically store a hash of a document onto the Bitcoin blockchain, and then anyone could come along and take that same file and they could check it and find that hash, the timestamp of it, and they could basically say, okay, well, you know, this document was stamped to the Bitcoin blockchain at this time, provably. And so we tried to extend that idea by saying, okay, can we basically make a 2.0 version of this where we're going to stamp certain metadata with it so we can actually make these hashes searchable, that they can tell you, different attributes of the content that was submitted so that we could create a marketplace or some sort of platform for people to be able to buy and sell licenses of media content. And so
Okay.
we called that Proof of Existence 2.0, and that was Poet. And so we did an ICO for Poet. We raised, I think, $11 million in the ICO in
This
like
was
10 minutes.
2016?
2017. This was like the
17,
early,
okay.
yeah. And
Like early 2017 or like mid,
yeah, so
late?
yeah, this was I think it happened in maybe August of 2017, the ICO, but we actually
Okay.
decided that unlike other ICOs, we were going to build an alpha product before we actually launched anything. So we were like
Right.
wanted to demonstrate that it could work. And like so we raised 11 million or 10 million in a few minutes, which was a wild experience in and of itself. And we were one of like the early tokens to get listed on Binance, because I had a kind of a relationship and history with CZ. And uh, the token, I think by like December of 2017, had ripped to like $1 billion valuation. And so,
Wow.
standard token stuff like, you have a foundation and you have like tokens allocated for, development of your ecosystem, yada, yada, yada. And so as this like happens, we go from like a small organization with like moderate, to minimal resources to like, okay, hundreds of millions of dollars of perceived money created from this token. And
Yeah.
so like, what do you do when that happens? Like, you start investing into subsidiary projects to build on your thing. You start investing into other projects that you think have potential. You start growing and expanding your team. You just start like basically deploying the capital.
Yeah.
And that experience really, I guess, took it to the next level. Like, it's one thing to build a project, but then it really like to get into the business of building projects and supporting projects, you start to learn like how the business works. And it's bullshit. Like it's like I realized like, okay, the worst thing that we ever did was try to build a product and hire developers to come build a product that actually damaged the project. The best thing to do is to build like this roadmap that goes on into infinity.
Yeah.
Don't actually launch or build anything. Only invest into marketing and only invest into market making and exchange listings. The more real the project is, like the worse it's gonna do. Um, and so like
Well, why do you think that is, by the way? Like what lessons did you learn about that made you realize that the more people using these coins, the worse the price is going to be?
yeah, because you're selling a vaporware and it's a zero sum game. Like, when the price is going up, it's someone's having to buy for the price to go up. And if you're actually spending money on real things like salaries, et cetera, that's money leaking out of the system. And so when money
Hmm.
starts leaking out to the system, like, okay, now you've created this pressure on the price that like ultimately you have to have more and more new buyers coming into the system in order to support it, or otherwise you just start bleeding out and dying, which is what happens ultimately to like all projects. But the more money that's bleeding out that actually isn't fundamentally bringing people into the system is like popping the market dynamic of your token, let's say. So you just want to spend money on things that bring new investors in. And it took us a while because again, we're not galaxy brain, but it took us a while to appreciate like this is how it worked. And in that process, what happened is like all this money that we were deploying to try to like make our thing quote real ended up just becoming an anchor. And all the money that we thought we made, we lost. And so the hundreds of millions of dollars, became not hundreds of millions of dollars, but the $10 million a month that we were spending on investments and people and et cetera, that was real money that was being spent.
Yeah.
And so we found ourselves like halfway through 2018 hemorrhaging money. And the path in front of us is like we're gonna go bankrupt. Like there's like we've just like basically built the Titanic and then it's fucking sinking right now. And you can imagine as like someone who at the time I'm like 27 years old, maybe I'm 28 years old. I'm going through like a accelerated quarter life crisis or midlife crisis of wow, I on paper I made hundreds of millions of dollars, and here I am losing hundreds of millions of dollars. I actually invested this is a thing I don't like to admit, but I invested over 1,000 Bitcoins into Poet personally. Uh,
Oh yeah, wow.
and yeah. So I mean, like here I am, like realizing that I've scammed myself, and it's like I I spent all this time and effort and energy. I invested so much into this thing that was, a complete experiment that I didn't actually have conviction, especially the derivative projects that were being built on it. I didn't have conviction in these projects. Like, I was doing it because I was pursuing what I had convinced myself was a good use of my time. But what really had convinced me of that was following the money, and
Yeah.
and like at the end of the day, I was going to end up losing all my money on something I didn't buy in on. And then at the same time, I'm like looking at my business, and like, we had built all these different media brands and conferences, and we had so much stuff going on. And I'm looking at like Bitcoin Magazine, and it's like, I actually believe in Bitcoin. I've had
Yeah.
conviction in Bitcoin since the very beginning that this was going to happen. So like I made this like do or die bet on these things I had low conviction in, and then I was basically neglecting and investing barely anything into the actual thing that I had absolute conviction in. And so that haunted me. And there was a conversation that actually came about with one of our early team members, Aaron Von Ward.
Lost your audio there for.
Call came into my cell phone, took over my headphones. So that was like, wow, this is, like everything is downstream of Bitcoin. And, if there's one thing that this company should be focused on, it's the thing that we have conviction in. And that being the best in that thing actually equates to being the best in all of crypto, because it's the one real thing. Like if there's a scaling problem in Bitcoin, there's a scaling problem in all other cryptos. Like if there's every issue that Bitcoin's going to face and have to cross is really a problem every other ecosystem is going to have to cross. So like there's no point in even trying to support or spend time on these other protocols. Just focus on the one thing that actually matters. And the issues that we're going to face there are going to matter to everyone.
Yeah.
So that really rung true. And so like as once that dawned on me, it was like, okay, we have a limited amount of time. We are going to cut everything that we do at this business down to just the things that are Bitcoin related. And we're going to focus 100% of our energy and resources on making Bitcoin happen. And that way, if we go bankrupt, at least I can like look myself in the mirror and say that I like went bankrupt on something. Like I would do it again, basically.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did, and we published a blog post called "Make Bitcoin Fun Again." And people kind of take this.
When was that?
This was the end of 2018. So I think we published it in December, but it took us a few months to actually execute the reorganization of the company.
So let me ask you, just back it up a little bit. So in 2017, early 2018, mid 2018, was this entity that you were doing the Poet and organizing conferences, I guess, for ICOs and stuff like that, whatever, was it also, did it own Bitcoin Magazine? Was it also doing Bitcoin stuff? And then you just decided, I'm just going to go all in on the Bitcoin stuff and stop doing all that other stuff?
So basically, we had two primary brands in the media side, which was Distributed and Bitcoin Magazine. Distributed was like our enterprise brand. It didn't really talk about crypto. And then Bitcoin Magazine was all things crypto. So it was Bitcoin, other tokens, Ethereum, whatever. And we had a VC business, we had a tech business, we had a consulting business. We had, dude, I can't even remember all the shit that we had at this point. But so,
well, you see that now, actually, man. Like, there's so many young guys that are like entrepreneurial hustlers that are making so much money in NFTs and DeFi, not so much DeFi, mostly NFTs and crypto generally, that I I mean, I struggle with this a lot. Have I have like a longing, I guess, to try to like wake people up, and especially people that I think that could make significant contributions to Bitcoin, and sort of look like the guy, for example, that does the Pudgy Penguins, I think it's called, or no, what is it? I can't remember the name of it, but it's one of those NFT projects, and he's this young guy. He created the website bitcoinorshit.com. Remember that site?
Bitcoin or shit?
Bitcoinorshit.com, bitcoinorshit.com.
Uh-huh.
And it's like you go onto this website and you just look at, like, if I had bought Bitcoin instead of a shake weight, how much money would I
Oh,
have right now?
yeah, I have seen this.
If I
Yeah, yeah,
if I
yeah,
had
yeah, yeah,
bought Bitcoin instead of a Tony Robbins
yeah,
motivational book, how much would I have right now?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's got all these like really awesome things, Generation 1 iPod, like all this stuff, right? And it shows
yeah.
you how much money you'd have. That one's super viral. He used to work actually for Swan, and then when the NFT bubble kind of came up, he's such a smart guy when it comes to branding and viral content that he kind of got into like launching an NFT series. And like I go in and I listen to him on Twitter Spaces sometimes. And I'm like, man, if only this kid was like fast forwarded to be more mature and realize the things that we realize once you like really take an ethical kind of look at what you're doing in crypto, quote unquote crypto. And in the end, what you're doing is you're convincing people to buy shit that's going to go down in value and get them wrecked.
Well,
And then like you got to reconcile that. And either what they do is they either leave and they kind of rug pull and exit and just kind of go quiet, or they do something like what you did, which is become elastic band rebound and become even more of a strength for Bitcoin, and like outdo as everything they did in crypto for Bitcoin to kind of like get back to karmic positive
well,
on
yeah.
the
So,
scale.
like a few things. Like first off, I think the vast majority of people that are in crypto do not get into crypto to scam people. Like, I don't think really almost any like maybe there's a couple, maybe the people who do the best, maybe like the people who are the most Machiavellian psychopaths, and they're like, they know exactly what they're doing, are in it to scam people. But the vast majority of people are not in it to scam people. A lot of people, they get taken by the incentives of look at all the money that's being made, and
Mhm.
fundamentally there's nothing wrong with capitalism. I like, not only is there nothing wrong with it, capitalism is the greatest force of good in the world. I'm a massive capitalist. That's why I love Bitcoin, is because of capitalism. So people, there's no demonization of that needs to happen. What people don't understand is that it's the perception of making money. It's the belief that you're making money, when in reality it's you're building your castle, your citadel on fucking sand, and it's ephemeral. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And the what I would also say is, like, there's been this conflation of all tokens and all assets other than Bitcoin as shitcoins, um, which I don't buy into. The what I think is that like, okay, all of these coins that have been created, these tokens, these are all securities. Bottom line, like, these are securities. And because we have a law in the United States that says, you can't issue unregistered securities, um, uh, people contort their project to make them not securities. So, they say, oh, well, there's no expectation of earning money. We don't pay a dividend. We don't make any profit. Like, you use this token to have an access key to this thing. It's this like Rube Goldberg machine that's built in order to have a law firm write a piece of paper saying that your security is not a security. And so, like I don't think there's any issue with the concept of equity. Like, I don't think there's any issue with that. And Bitcoin Magazine, the Bitcoin BTC Inc., we use equity to incentivize employees. Every company that's traded on the public stock market is using equity to incentivize outcomes. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And so I believe that if, like, one day we have a reality where the SEC is gone, um, one of the best use cases of Bitcoin is a crowdfunding, frictionless crowdfunding from people around the world. Like I saw the power of doing a token sale, an ICO, and raising
Yeah.
$10 million from thousands of people around the world. Like that in minutes. That's powerful. Like that's the potential of when you take friction out of our financial system. So if I hope that one day there's a day where someone can just issue a security. They can say, I'm starting a company. My company is going to do this. This is how we're going to make money. This is what our strategy is. We're raising $20 million, and we don't care if you are accredited or not accredited. We don't care if you're going to invest $1 million or one penny. We're open for all people of the world to invest into our crazy idea that we're going to go pursue, and we might fail. Like, that is an amazing outcome. And so I don't want to get in, like, I don't want to say you shouldn't do that because you might fail. You shouldn't do that because everything is a shitcoin compared to Bitcoin. It's like, no, you're starting a project or a company. You're creating a company.
Hmm.
You're selling equity. Like, yes, you might fail. That's the nature of shit. But just call a spade a spade. And like the focus should be on being transparent and forthright with your investors. And like, you should be following good standard accounting practices so that you're like doing so, which none of these things that are like, token projects at ICO do any of that stuff. Like there's no like like because they're not a company, they avoid any sort of actual like accountability or accounting, etc. So but I do hope for a day where some of these ideas that are being done on other protocols actually get done in the right way on top of Bitcoin. And I think that it's very what's the word? I like not to steal a saying, but I really like Matt Odell's stay humble, stack sats. Like you need to be humble about what does the future of our economy look like? What does the future of permissionless value look like? And I think anyone who tells you that they know exactly how this is going to unfold and that there are no ideas beyond Bitcoin as digital gold that you hodl and never move. Like I don't think that that's a humble perspective, and I think time can tell us like how this is going to look. So anyway, I don't know,
Yeah, no,
weird
that's
tangent.
good. I kind of agree with that as well. That's why I invest in companies that do other things on Bitcoin and with Bitcoin. Like what you're talking about there, I'm friends with James Wallace and advising him with his company investing in it, and they do digital securities, digital.co, digtl.co, I think is the website. And it's all based on Liquid Network right now. But if RGB or Taro or something else on top of Lightning Network becomes where you issue digital securities, then they'll support that. But Liquid Network right now actually is a real technical masterpiece for being able to issue digital securities that do, sit in your Bitcoin wallet alongside your Bitcoin. And even like Liquid has built Rare Toshi, right? So you can have digital art, digital game items, and stuff like that, also in Liquid Network. So it does enable other use cases like collectibles and art and stuff like that, but also compliant securities. And Bitfinex has this Bitfinex securities thing. They're doing this deal with the license in El Salvador where they can do the volcano bonds as securities on the Bitfinex platform. Bitfinex works with Liquid Network. So one of the things that James Wallace did recently was he partnered up with the Wall Street Bets guy to create the Nancy Pelosi portfolio tracker called Insider. And so the Insider is like anytime Nancy Pelosi makes a trade, it's like an ETF that tracks Nancy Pelosi's trades, and
Must do
it's
really well.
yeah, and it's Insider, and it's a liquid token, and it's traded on compliantly 24/7 on the Merge exchange. So it's just like there's definitely a lot of innovation happening towards getting us to like modernize the way that we look at equities and stocks and stuff like that. But
And I'm not like a fan. Like I got into Bitcoin because I wanted to remove politics from money. I wanted to remove the state from our financial system. And so like I'm not a cheerleader of the SEC. Now I also understand why a lot of the laws the SEC has, like where they came from and why they made them. And like I think that there's definitely a need to educate and keep people from getting themselves scammed. Not that the SEC does a great job at that, but I get at least the intention. But like I see a world where like, okay, if hyper Bitcoinization is successful, we're going to implode the state. The state is going to be a shadow of the state that we have now. And there are already vast swaths of the world where there is no state, like where the state is, who's the SEC of Botswana? Who's the SEC of some third world developing nation? Well, those people need the ability to access the global financial market just as much as anybody else does.
yeah,
So I think we have to build these technologies in a way that's compatible with like not just like the SEC's view of the financial system or the United States' view of the financial system, but of a future state financial system that's going to be accessible to all people.
yeah, and that's one of the things is like I struggle with as well, because I came into Bitcoin through the Ron Paul funnel as well, and through the libertarian Austrian economics rabbit hole. And before probably 2021, I was much more comfortable identifying as like a libertarian. But then you combine like the COVID stuff with the crypto bubble and all the libertarians out there claiming that like, the DeFi is libertarian free markets, and gaslighting Bitcoiners for being critical and kind of somewhat supporting the SEC for shutting down a lot of the scams. It kind of makes me, I'm still struggling with it now. It's like a long process. I'm like, do I even want to see libertarian free markets the way that they prescribe that, they should look like anymore? Because what we saw in 2021 and 2022 was essentially like a free market capitalist system that had no gates on it. And it's all, everybody would always say like, and a lot of these people claim the libertarian banner. Like a lot of these VC
Yeah.
firms and exchanges and all these guys are like, we got to disrupt the SEC because the regulations were 100 years old and they're not meant for modern finance. And then what do? They end up promoting Terra Luna and other Ponzi scams and just dialing the nonsense up to like 11, almost worse than anything you'd ever see in Wall Street bubbles before, to the point where it just blows itself up. And then
Well, well, that's because they're
eh,
trying to replicate the system that we have, and the system that we have is a Ponzi scheme. And
that's the
so,
problem. Right? So
yeah,
it's the system we have is a Ponzi, and they're trying to recreate that thing on a blockchain and call it innovation. But really, the reason why we all got into Bitcoin, most of us in the first place, was because this thing is it's a different asset. It's the first time that you're able to actually have sovereignty over your funds, and it's resistant to any kind of insider changing the parameters or doing anything to restrict you from verifying the supply or making a transaction. But then you get all these quote unquote libertarian people trying to build a free market with blockchain technology and whatever else they come up with, and it turns out that they just build a whole bunch of Ponzi scams.
so my like I hear you loud and clear on that. But I think that the right approach for us to take is like not for us to try to stop them, but for us to outcompete them, and for us to build something better and let the merits of the thing that we build speak for itself. Um, you know, uh, the way that Uber beat the taxi industry, like they didn't try to stop the taxi industry. They
Yeah.
just built an overwhelmingly better product that spoke for itself, and then imploded the taxi industry. And like, if we want to implode DeFi, then we need to figure out how to build products and services that achieve the ends that people actually want, but do it in a way that doesn't end up at the end of the day wrecking the users. And like, people will choose that system over the Ponzi system where they get wrecked at the end every time.
Well,
So,
what David, what do you think about, because like people like to say don't moralize money. when you're critical of whatever side of the spectrum. But like people will say, as if it's a bad thing to moralize money. Let's say don't moralize money. And it's kind of on that vein that you were just talking about, that we should be able to just present Bitcoin and Bitcoin options as the better alternative, not like the ethical choice or whatever. But I kind of struggle with that too, because I feel like you should do things ethically and you should call out unethical behavior. And when somebody is, say, like Mike Novogratz or Raul Paul or one of these guys are doing something unethical, really promoting something that's unethical, and they're taking money in exchange, even though I've done things in the past because I was not mature enough, I was too naive, I was blinded by the money or whatever. I've done unethical things in the past in the crypto space, and I've learned from that, and I've realized it was unethical. And then now I like work as hard as I can to like never bring somebody into a piece of shit coin that's just going to end up being a rug or a Ponzi or whatever. So I only ever talk about Bitcoin, and I do my best to educate people about why crypto and DeFi and NFTs is not a good investment, not a good like place to put your energy and your efforts. And there's a lot of reputation risk and legal risk and ethical risk in participating in quote unquote crypto. But you get all these people that are so reactive to that criticism as if you're some kind of like commie or against capitalism for pointing out all the ethical risks and reputation risks, and like, oh, you're just a maxi. So I know you straddle this space pretty well. So like, what do you think's going on there? Why are the crypto friends of
Well,
ours
so
so against that?
first off, I wanted to say I don't straddle this well. I mean, I'm as the past week has shown, I get shit from all sides. So I think I just, uh, I just do me. That's all I can do is do it my way, and then just,
Well, you did straddle it very well up until last week, I guess.
yeah. So, I would say that on the moral side, like, okay, not to make the analogy too strongly between Bitcoin and a religion, though I do think that there are a lot
It's a
of
good analogy.
parallels. Yeah, and I don't think it's so much that like Bitcoin is a religion as much as maybe we misunderstand what religion is. So,
Exactly.
but like I think that there are many different flavors for people finding and utilizing religion as a tool. And I don't think that there's necessarily one way that's right. It's like there's many different things that work differently for different people. But I would just say that like all people sin. Like, all people are sinners. And personally, I take the approach that I would rather do my best as an individual to avoid doing sin and inspire others to go out and do good deeds, then focus on targeting people that are sinning, castigating them, and saying if you do what those people are doing, you're going to go burn in hell. And like, I'm not saying that there's not a place for that kind of judgment, but it's not something that I feel comfortable doing. Um, and it's not my approach. And I feel like if you want to keep people from making bad decisions, if you want to keep people from being drug addicts, if you want to keep people from being alcoholics, if you want to keep people from gambling or killing or whatever, you have to show them a better way.
Hmm.
And like that gets back to building a better product, building a better product or service, and showing them the path of how do you do it right. And I think you know um, uh, when someone is living a good life because they're making good decisions in their personal life, that inspires others to that type of behavior as well. So, I don't know what the right answer is. And like part of our ethos behind the conference and what we did to build a Bitcoin only business is like we were very intentional from the get go that we are not trying to create a purity test. Like we frankly don't care about what you do outside of Bitcoin. Our only goal is to advance Bitcoin. And so we want every person on the planet to use Bitcoin, and we want them to get more and more involved in Bitcoin. So if go back to the church analogy. We're starting a church. We don't care that you're a sinner. Like, we're not going to shut the doors of the church to you because you go and sin, or when you walk out of the church, you're going to go and keep sinning. We want the sinners to come to the church every day, and however we can get them to take a taste of what it is that we're doing, of what Bitcoin is about. We think that little by little that makes an impact. And so maybe maybe they're sinning 100% of their time. Maybe they're shitcoin 100% of their time, and the Bitcoin conference is the only place where they come and spend any time on Bitcoin. And then maybe after year 2, they're spending 98% of their time shitcoining and 2% of their time on Bitcoin. And after year 3, they're spending 90% of their time shitcoining and 10% of their time on Bitcoin. That's success to us. Like, we want to pull all people into Bitcoin. And the sooner that people can realize you can build your house on sand or you can build your house on rock, like we think there's a transformation, an intellectual transformation that all people are going to go through. And so, there's a saying in evangelical Christianity. I know very little about this, but we have somebody at our company who knows a lot about it, who's a church organizer, and it's called seeker sensitive. So, people who show up at your church, who are not members of your congregation, they are seeker sensitive. It means that they are seeking answers. They are seeking information about something that maybe they have something going on in their life. That's why they're showing up at church, and they don't know the answer to their problem, but they're here to find out maybe if there could be an answer there. I see crypto people as seeker sensitive people. They're people who know that there's something wrong in the financial system, or that there's something wrong, or there's some way that they're not able to use their money as they want. So they're showing up in crypto because they get some element. They're seeking some sort of truth, but they just haven't completed the journey of being like, okay, well, Bitcoin's your answer. And so, like, crypto people are kind of like the closest to adopting Bitcoin than anyone else is. So,
do you think the more moralizing to them is probably going to not be an effective conversion tool if they're maybe open to exploring like the more sound principles of Bitcoin and opening that door in their mind to maybe what I've been doing in crypto is unethical? If someone's actually telling them you're a scammer, you're unethical, they're probably just going to resist it and close the door and just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you walk in, if you're trying to seek answers for why you should make life changes in your life, and you walk into a hardcore Baptist, Southern Baptist church, and they're screaming that you're going to burn in hell, that turns a lot of people off. I'm not saying it turns everyone off, but it turns a lot of people off. And so that's just not my way.
Are you familiar with Nicholas from Galloy's story? Nicholas Bertie?
I'm not.
I had him on my podcast a couple years ago as well. I'm an investor in Galloy and Bitcoin Beach Wallet, and so I wanted to have him come on. And he told me on the podcast that he actually got started the same sort of way that you were telling me that you got started, and like Corey from Swan did as well in the 2017 ICO bubble. He like got his stride or whatever of making money because he created the Harmony One blockchain. He did the ICO. Him and a couple other guys did the ICO for the Harmony One blockchain. Yep. And he realized probably about 6 to 8 months in, that thing was like similar success story, worth hundreds of millions of dollars at the top, maybe $1 billion, I can't remember. But he realized, because he came previously from the VR industry, he was a like VR developer guy, and then he saw blockchain and the ICO bubble. He's like, I guess I can raise money for my blockchain startup, and maybe I'll do something with VR blockchain. But he realized that like what he was working on was not helping people, and the cutting edge of technology was the Lightning Network, and he wanted to work on something that would actually move people forward and help the world and fulfill some sort of intellectual and like
purpose to your life,
technical purpose. So he just gave up all that stuff and he stopped doing it. The team went on and kept doing it, but he left and he started Galloy, which led to the Bitcoin Beach Wallet, which led to El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. So there's time and time again, I keep coming across these stories of people who came in through somewhat of an unethical lens, where if you were a Bitcoin maximalist, sort of toxic maxi type of personality, you'd be saying you're a scammer, get out of here, whatever, and you may turn away this person. But something causes somebody like Nicholas and yourself and Corey from Swan and Michael Saylor and all these people who end up becoming significant network effects for Bitcoin something causes them to see what they're doing is probably not the right path to be on, and start working 100% on Bitcoin. And I wonder, like, I can't, I wonder for ask you, I can't ask them right now, but like, do you think there's any part of the Bitcoin maximalist philosophy that caused you to sort of think and rethink what you were doing and say, you know what, I should focus all my time and energy on Bitcoin? Or is it something internal that you came to your own conclusions without anybody saying, the shitcoins are a scam, ICOs are a scam? Like, what kind of
Yeah,
was it, you
so
think?
I would say internal, because at the time there wasn't such a thing as really Bitcoin maximalism. I mean, there was definitely a community of people, and that didn't do crypto stuff. I mean, I'm like, but there was not the fault lines did not exist how they did today. And I would say that even like we went through sort of a philosophical what's the word, schism with the block size wars, where when the block size wars happened, you really bifurcated the community into two groups, maybe one group that was more philosophical and one group that was more technical. And the philosophical camp, um, uh, chase BCH and then BSV and et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a lot of people in that category too who like considered themselves Bitcoiners, somehow became quote shitcoiners because they were literally working on an incompatible fork of the network, who also had to like make their path back to Bitcoin Core. But so when that fork happened, who was left at Bitcoin Core was really the technically focused people, and it was a much smaller ecosystem of people. And when and like I would say, like I had a maybe a perspective on this, like I'm not some deeply technical person, so like I didn't know how the block wars were going to turn out while they were happening. If you look at who supported BCH, it was often the business community, people who had like a business perspective from which they saw stuff. So I had a lot of sympathy for that. I knew Roger Ver, and I liked Roger, and I liked Jihan, and I mean, a lot of great Bitcoiners went and ended up following BCH. But what we discovered from that process is that you can't hard fork Bitcoin. Like that's what was discovered. Like Bitcoin as it exists at layer one, a hard fork will never be successful. It doesn't matter how good of an idea you think you have, it won't be successful. So you have to figure out how to make your idea possible given the construct and parameters that Nakamoto consensus puts on you. And so what that meant was it's going to happen in layers. And so like Lightning was this beautiful thing. Like it really was a beautiful thing for the community because it was a solution to a philosophical problem. How are we going to scale Bitcoin to the masses? Which is like an admirable vision. And
Mm-hmm.
to the Rogers of the world, it was, oh, we're going to make the blocks bigger or whatever, blah 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 blah. But it's a real problem. How do we scale to the masses? And then there was a technical solution consistent with Nakamoto consensus that did not require a hard fork, where we're going to build it on another layer. And so like that was a beautiful thing to me, like
Yeah.
of where both of the communities, both of these two different groups, the technical community and the philosophical entrepreneurial community, were able to align around a directional vision of Bitcoin, and it was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we did the first Bitcoin conference, when we brought it back, Bitcoin 2019, Lightning was at the core of the conference. It was the first conference ever where everything was purchasable for Bitcoin.
Amazing.
Tickets, swag, merch. We had arcade games at the event where we changed out the change machines with I forget what it's called, but the change machines had generated QR codes where you could pay 5 cents in Lightning to play the arcade game. Like we wanted to showcase this idea and inspire people to come build again on Bitcoin. And yeah, I think that there is power like that inspired a bunch of people. Let's just put it like that. And so to go
Totally.
back to your question about like, hey, did you become Bitcoin only because of the Bitcoin maximalist view? No, I became Bitcoin only because of my own journey, like my own growing lack of conviction in the other protocols and systems, etc., and then a growing conviction in Bitcoin's ability to do all the things. That Bitcoin is not 1.0 tech; it's not dead tech.
Hmm.
It is truly capable of whatever we need it to be capable of. You're just going to have to build it in a way that is maybe more difficult, and that jives with how the world works, like math. Like you
Totally.
start with very basic mathematical functions, and they compound and they build on top of each other until you go from addition to multiplication to eventually you get to the how does aerodynamics work, and like how does calculus work. And so like I think Bitcoin's development path will be similar. It will at its foundation will be simple, and then it will get increasingly built in layers of complexity and abstractions. And so, um, uh, yeah, yeah,
So I think like mostly agree with the framing, but I kind of take a little bit of a different perspective because I was one of those like no 2x plebs on Twitter that was like super actively like lobbying against the 2 MB hard fork
yeah,
and Segwit 2x. So like but I was also working at the crypto fund, and I was in the Gabe's group with all the other entrepreneurs. And it's true that if you were in the circle of like the entrepreneur and the businesses that were trying to build in crypto and even some on Bitcoin, like BitGo and Coinbase and all these exchanges and services, you would definitely choose to raise the blocks because you're running a business, you're focusing on your shareholder value, you're focusing on your profits. You don't want to necessarily invest the engineering resources into integrating with SegWit, upgrading address schemes, compressing your usage of block space, batching transactions, doing all this stuff that would require you to hire more Bitcoin engineers. Because at the time, it's like the ICO bubble is the hot thing. You want to support as many coins as you can. If you're BitGo, if you're BitPay, whatever, you want to just have as many coins on there, not worry about how to
if
optimize
you're
things.
BitPay, if you talk to BitPay, they'd say, hey, we're getting thousands of customer support tickets a day as fees are ballooning,
Right.
and we don't have the resources to pay for all these customer support tickets on transactions that aren't clearing, and our business is breaking. And like those are all valid things
Sure.
to be concerned about. But like, yeah, the business community is willing to sacrifice the ideas behind Bitcoin in
Exactly.
order
Yeah.
to build a product or service. And we can't sacrifice the ideas behind Bitcoin. That's what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. And so
That's why I
that's
think
yeah,
like that's why I think that it kind of comes down to like there was it wasn't just a split between philosophical people and technical people, because I tried to not be in an echo chamber at that time, and I spent some time with RBTC, like all the people in RBTC, and I was kind of debating. I started chatting with like Amaury Sachet, the lead dev of BCH, and I just really tried to find what was like the split there, because there was a bunch of technical people that ended up going and building stuff in BCH, and even in BSV there was some interesting like technical stuff that they were doing with like gigabyte blocks with that Peter guy from I forget the company name or whatever, but experimentations and like
yeah.
gigabyte blocks. And there was technical people on the big block side. There was philosophical people on the big block side. And the funny thing was like most of the philosophical people on the big block side were like the early Austrian economic people, and they were like the Jeffrey
The
Tuckers,
Nakamoto Institute guys,
Nakamoto Institute, yeah, like
the inventor of the term hyper Bitcoinization.
yeah, the hyper Bitcoinization dude. He went over and became a BSV guy. So like what it came down to me was like a misunderstanding. And John Sith actually kind of made me realize this a little bit more over the last couple of years. We've been like spending a lot of time on Clubhouse. A lot of there's like a community of like 100 or 200 of us, that kind of like regulars on Clubhouse, even still after Clubhouse is dead. But it's like American Hoddle and Jun Seth and, some cool thinkers come over, and we talk about this a lot. But the thing that I think the Austrians got wrong, and this is like a lot of the influential early Bitcoiner Austrians sided on the wrong side of this, because they all believed that in order to become a store of value, you had to first become a medium of exchange. And that's what Roger harped on really heavily. Like his whole campaign against Bitcoin was small block Bitcoin was, you need to have more transactions so that people use it as a medium of exchange, and then you'll get store of value. And he would always say things like Bitcoin would be $10,000 by now if it wasn't for those Bitcoin core developers blocking the stream. Like he'd like make the block stream joke. So it was like there's a whole philosophical thing about, like, I think a misunderstanding of how a money bootstraps into the world like Bitcoin and becomes a global reserve asset before a global reserve currency.
Yeah, but does it surprise you that there's a misunderstanding of how something happens that no one alive has ever seen happen before?
Right.
I mean, I was like, how dare you misunderstand this completely, unobserved phenomenon? You're going to hell, I mean.
No, but what I think it is that so you get the philosophical split, because you have a misunderstanding of how Bitcoin can become a global reserve asset. And then what you do, and the fatal flaw, the Achilles heel of all of the folks that were early Bitcoin influencers that end up burning their reputation and financially getting wrecked as well, like Jihan and Roger, on Bitcoin. Anyways, they spent so much of their treasury trying to support Bitcoin Cash and compete with
Unbelievable
Bitcoin.
sums. Unbelievable
Oh,
sums.
Bitmain lost their IPO
Hundreds
over
of
this.
thousands of Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that if you can't, this is why I say that the final boss of Bitcoin is not the central banks. It's yourself. It's your own ego. And the first boss, like, we've had boss fights already, and Roger Ver and the big blockers and the business guys, they actually provided a really valuable service to Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin wasn't able to defeat the insiders from having a coup over taking over the monetary properties or whatever, how could we expect it to stand up against central banks and governments? Like, if you can't even defeat the early proponents that want to change it, how can you resist the government wanting to change it? So the fact that Roger put up such a fight actually helped Bitcoin in the long run. And like, he may come to realize this eventually. His ego may calm down. He may realize it and come back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't care about who you are or whatever. Like, you can use Bitcoin whoever you are. But in a way, I think it always comes down to ego. If you can if you internalize how important you are to Bitcoin, then that leads you into the trap of trying to influence Bitcoin consensus. And once you start trying to influence Bitcoin consensus, that's going to eat you alive and just destroy you if you value your ego. If you can keep that stay humble, stack sats mantra and literally pursue ego death in Bitcoin and maintain that you're not important to Bitcoin, but you're going to do whatever you can to push forward Bitcoin, that's who becomes like legends in Bitcoin, I think. And I feel like that's what I was talking to you about recently. It was like, I think that's where maybe you might be at, entering a phase of like, you have so much that you've done for Bitcoin over the last few years, and you've got like, look, dude, honestly, I was in 2020, like 2019, 2020, I was starting to get kind of depressed about the network effects that were being built by all the shitcoins. I was like, man, like, where's our consensus? Like, who's going to be the consensus of Bitcoin? We need somebody to come in and show the world that like Bitcoin's cool. Bitcoin can put on massive conferences. There's tons of developers out there, because everybody's just seeing all these shitcoins raise billions of dollars. And even during the bear market, you
And
had
everyone's
consensus
shit
supporting
talking
everything.
Bitcoin, and there's no one pushing back on it.
Yeah. So then we got, it was you with Bitcoin Magazine, Jack Dorsey with Twitter eventually coming on as a Bitcoiner and putting Cash App and Square behind Bitcoin. Michael Saylor coming out as like the evolution of the Bitcoin evangelist, the Roger Ver type of a guy who can go on CNBC and talk to people but not cry, but actually use logic, and you know, and it was and Corey from Swan, like the Swan team, like organizing all of these, and obviously Blockstream, but Blockstream's been a constant. Like Blockstream's been a technical constant in Bitcoin. But I got to credit you guys at Bitcoin Magazine and you for being one of the things that kind of like made me breathe a sigh of relief finally and be like, okay, Jack Dorsey, David Bailey, Corey, and Saylor are like the new, like, you know, consensus times 5 or whatever, because you guys are all taking a piece and like focusing heavy on it and showing that Bitcoin is number one and why, you know, you can't come for the king.
Yeah.
So I got to say
I
thank you
appreciate
for
that.
you
Thank you.
know, for giving me conviction even more than I had in
Well,
Bitcoin
and I think
previously.
the story of our success, like it's not just that we said these things. Like the conference has been objectively very successful. Bitcoin Magazine has found a lot of success, and I hope that it has inspired entrepreneurs that there is value in focusing on the thing that you have conviction in. And like the story of the conference going from not even existing to the biggest finance conference in the
Oh,
world in
amazing.
three events. It's like you know, like credit to our team for working hard, but truly all credit to Bitcoin for showing up. Like that's why it worked, is because there is actually a community there of people building and making this fucking movement happen. And so and there's immense immense power in that community. And so like, you know, there's people building conferences, Bitcoin only conferences all around the world, and we're fucking all about it. Like that's what we want to see. Like that's the power of open, permissionless money for everyone. And so anyway, but you know, I also like, you know, to get to like maybe some of the controversy of the past week, you know, like I I don't think that we have decided that there is one way to use Bitcoin. I don't think that we've decided that Bitcoin is purely a store value vessel and that's it. I don't think that that's been determined. And you know, I'm not smart enough to try to put my own imprint on what the future of Bitcoin looks like. And so, you know, we made the decision when we launched this conference in 2019, in 2018, we made this decision. But you know, we're abiding by this decision that we want to create a platform and a place for all parts of Nakamoto consensus to come together, for all ideas that are about Bitcoin to be discussed, debated, pushed forward, pushed back upon, and for all people to participate in this movement, regardless of whether they are tech geniuses or drug dealers or political outcasts or dictators or whoever, like whoever. And there are some people that disagree with that view, but like I can't worry myself about what other people think. I didn't go Bitcoin only because of what other people think. I didn't build this brand because of what other people think. We built this business because we had a vision of a community that all people could be a part of, and that we were going to build something that could inspire the world towards Bitcoin. And it was going to be fun and it was going to be open, and we were going to be on the bleeding edge of all parts of Bitcoin, and we were going to support and lift up all new ideas of Bitcoin, and let the market speak. And that's what got us here, and that's what we have to stick to. And as soon as I start trying to be, or our platform starts trying to be what other people want it to be, other than that, we're going to lose our way, because there's no way to keep everyone happy trying to be something that is not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the you know, we so like for those of your listeners that aren't aware of this, the drama that we found ourselves in is like we made a decision to support ordinals. We made that decision to support ordinals a few months ago. I think Bitcoin Magazine was the first place that ordinals was even written about. You know, ordinals are a meta layer on top of Bitcoin that are effectively colored coins, which color coins are an old school idea, and I like color coins when color coins, were back in 2013. But that allows you to do certain things, uh, uh, utilizing Bitcoin that basically creates a Dewey Decimal System, or a serialization system of Satoshis, the atomic unit of Bitcoin, and to effectively transfer those atomic units around using Bitcoin transactions. And the kind of first use case that people have started using them for, though I'm sure won't be the only use case, is inscriptions, and which is basically storing some sort of information or data or image on chain, and tying these ordinals to a specific inscription and trading them a la NFTs. I've never been an NFT guy. I don't collect NFTs. I do collect Bitcoin artifacts. I do love Bitcoin history. I'm probably one of the top power users on Scarcity, buying art, and I bought Hal Finney's PGP Corp work
Oh, you got
uniform.
that? Nice.
Yeah, I did. Very thrilled about that. And so I am a nerd who likes to collect this stuff, but I've never been an NFT person. But I do know people that are NFT people, and like
Hmm.
it's not just a grift. Like I don't know. Are you familiar, Brad, with rare Pepes?
Yeah, yeah. I was a rare
Yeah,
Pepe collector back in the day.
yeah. So rare Pepes have been a thing in Bitcoin a long time. I've never known rare Pepes to be a thing that you do if you want to make money. I've only known rare Pepes to be a thing that you do if you're gonna losing money. And it's but like I know some rare Pepe collectors, and they love it, and it's like Pokemon cards for them or whatever, adult Pokemon cards. Well, if people want to bring that type of creative thing to Bitcoin, I'm here for that. Like, I'm on board with that. I think that should be celebrated. And maybe the technical merits of how it's done, that should be critiqued. And that's a great conversation and a valuable conversation to have. Should it happen on the main chain? Should it be happening on other layers? If it happens on other layers, what are those other layers? How do they work? What are the trade offs? Like, those are the conversations that need to be being had. But not like, hey, I think NFTs are stupid. And so, therefore, since I think NFTs are stupid, we shouldn't have NFTs in Bitcoin. And, anyone who's excited about NFTs, you're scamming people. And you should go work on Ethereum and do that stuff there. That's just not how we view the world. Like, somebody's excited about something, um, they should build it on Bitcoin if they can build it on Bitcoin. Figure out the best way to do it. We're here to support you. Don't don't lie to people. Don't deceive people. I don't think people should be, I believe in ethics, but like, if people want to go do something that they truly think is cool, do it on Bitcoin. And I don't think Pokemon cards are an investment. I don't think Pokemon cards are a stored value. I don't think Pokemon cards should be a medium of exchange or a unit of account. I don't think that you should tell people to put their life savings in Pokemon cards because they're gonna, be able to retire on it. It's a game, it's a toy, it's a collectible. But as long as you say that's what it is, it's a game, it's a toy, it's a collectible, it's a fun thing that maybe you get some enjoyment out of, then go for it. And people have the right to participate in that system if they want to. And and if people want to speculate on it, I don't have a problem with people going to casinos and gambling in casinos as long as that's what they know, that's what they're doing. So
Hmm.
we made a decision that we were going to support ordinals. We had a team at our company that I tasked who likes ordinals to come up with a way for us to do something with it. Their first idea was like, hey, let's put our covers on ordinals. And one of the other mandates I gave them is like, okay, if we're going to do something as a business with ordinals, figure out a business application of it. Show me that we can do something as a business. So they decided, okay, let's do this a Dutch auction for our covers and try to do it in a transparent and fair way. Probably how we did the sale was not the best way to do it. People saw 10 Bitcoins that are auctioning, even though it's a Dutch auction and you're supposed to start it at some absurd price. Like that's not what people saw. They saw us thinking we're trying to sell these things for 10 Bitcoins. And I agree. That's an insane price. But like I'm completely unapologetic about us supporting ordinals and us wanting to commercialize them in some way. I don't have any issue with that, and I won't back down or apologize for that. Period.
So I think like it, obviously you're the type of person that's going to do what you want, and it doesn't, you're probably the type of person that will actually be fired up when someone's telling you you're not doing something
Oh,
right.
dude,
It's going to
I
motivate you even
fucking
more to go the other
100%,
way.
hundred
So,
percent.
so I think like I could see that, right? So, and the thing is, like, here's just the way I'll tell you if you care or not. I'm just gonna tell you
Yeah.
what my thoughts are on this, because I think it's like a game theory choice to make here. You're kind of at a crossroad potentially with like you're a media company that is also probably one of the most respected brands in Bitcoin at this point, right? And it's like you're, whether Bitcoin maximalists or whatever are on board with the brand or what you're doing, doesn't matter to you, because you're just going to keep you're going to keep investing in Bitcoin projects and Bitcoin companies. You're going to keep doing hackathons and doing the magazine and doing your thing, because you don't need Bitcoin maximalists to like make your business work. Like, you make your business work. And I don't think there's really anything that you can do that would cause you to like lose profits. It's not one of those situations where you're going to go bankrupt because nobody's going to like your stuff anymore. It's just like right now it's like there's tailwinds and headwinds. And for your brand and for your company, it's kind of like what Michael Saylor chose to do with the Bitcoin Mining Council. There was so many people that were like against the idea of having the Bitcoin Mining Council and centralizing Bitcoin and trying to represent Bitcoin or whatever, but he did it anyway, and he did it in a way that was like not poking the hornet's nest and trying to like let the drama die, but also doing it in consensus, where he was just going to do proof of work and he was just going to show that what he's doing is in consensus with Bitcoin and not get bogged down in the drama. So I kind of feel like there's a little bit of a thing happening here where it makes sense as Bitcoin Magazine to cover ordinals and to write articles about ordinals. And if you personally are like into collecting ordinals, that's cool, right? It's like whatever. People are going to be like, oh, the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine or the founder of Bitcoin Magazine is into ordinals. What a douche. And then you're just going to be like, I don't give a shit. So the thing is, I think that's causing a little bit of the extra drama is that you're kind of taking an editorial decision to boost the network effects of the ordinals. And that's where I think the game theoretical choice here is either like you're going to get into a situation where your ego is just going to be continually pounded on and you're going to have to continually defend your decision, and you're going to maybe end up turning against Bitcoin maximalists because they're turning against you because they perceive what you're doing as a threat to Bitcoin. And it may be this loop that you're going to get yourself caught into, that you probably could just disconnect from it and not have to deal with that at all and focus on the mission and focus on the business and focus on Bitcoin, while still personally being into ordinals and seeing where that goes. And the only reason I say that is because the reason why Bitcoiners care about this ordinals thing so much, it's not just because they're like against stuff being built on Bitcoin. It's one of those things that is looked at, like myself, I think like this, even though I'm an investor in scarcity and I've bought some ordinals and I struggle with what personally I should do or say or whatever, I do at the end of the day see the argument that like Bitcoin is meant to be a tool to onboard 1 billion people to sound money and to protect themselves from monetary oppression and financial repression, all this stuff. And we fought the whole block size war about this issue, about like trying to make sure that we focus on the decentralized properties of Bitcoin and scale in layers. And we optimize Bitcoin at the protocol level and compressed everything down in terms of transaction batching and SegWit and then Taproot, all for the purpose that for not like right now, it's for like 10 years. In 10 years, when Bitcoin is actually going to be used by every person on the planet, like you said earlier, we're going to need to make sure that we're using Bitcoin efficiently. So I think it's like the reason why there's so much like emotional reaction to the ordinal stuff is because people are looking at it and being like, this is not what Bitcoin is supposed to be used for. And obviously it's true that if it's possible, then it's consensus. You know what I mean? Like if it's, Taproot got put in, and because Taproot got put in, it enabled this use of Bitcoin, which allows you to store data and images on the chain. And then people found a way to make that an interesting use case for like art and NFTs and stuff. So they're doing it, and so obviously it's a valid transaction. So you can't like take that argument to be like this isn't Bitcoin, because it is Bitcoin. Like by the consensus rules that are currently in there, it is Bitcoin. So it is Bitcoin, but that like the thing is that it doesn't make it right to use Bitcoin this way. And that's, I think, the thing that people are going to like. You said Bitcoin is a religion, right? And it's true. And that's one of those things that's like the mimetic power, like not the meme power, but Rene Girard, I think his name is, he wrote this book about mimetics. And he wrote a bunch of books about mimetics. And it's really interesting if you've ever got a chance to download one of the audiobooks and read about it. He talks about the thing that powers religions. And mimetic desire is like one of the strongest things that powers all religions and cults and everything. And when you really think about it, like Bitcoin and the mission of Bitcoin to the most active 2%, like the intransigent minority Bitcoiners that are going to defend Bitcoin with their lives, the mimetic power of what they are doing to try to help the world is almost like a cause, like an activist thing. And they will defend that emotionally just with their being, because they like Bitcoin becomes the top of their identity stack, right? So like when something is perceived as like an attack on their identity stack, like ordinals kind of became just like the big blocks, like any kind of like non consensus change in Bitcoin, people are going to get emotional about it.
Well, just to clarify, big blocks, consensus, ordinals, consensus. So
sort of. That's
different.
where it gets tricky. And that's where I see your point and where I see so many people's points, because if we had a seen that this could have been used to do data storage on the Bitcoin blockchain, if we had a first saw that use case, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have get put through. Like people, it's actually like it's kind of like an exploit that got passed that we just didn't realize until inscriptions got built. And therefore it's not social consensus, but it's technical consensus. Like you can actually do this on Bitcoin. So therefore it's legit. It's a Bitcoin transaction. It's Bitcoin. But socially and whatever other ephemeral sort of form of consensus there is in Bitcoin,
So
it's kind of going against the grain there, which makes people react this way.
let me respond to a few things that you said. So first off, the difference between social consensus and technical consensus. We don't have a way of determining what social consensus is. We have a way of determining what technical consensus is. That's why we have proof of work. That's why we have a consensus mechanism. Like that is how we generate a single source of truth for the network. And so when we add a different layer of consensus outside of that exists, that can be attacked. That can be Sybil attacked. That could be faked. Does Twitter determine what is social consensus? Is like that going to be the platform that determines it? Because the world is a big place. There's many different people with many different perspectives and many different cultures on many different platforms that use Bitcoin in many different ways. So, I think that personally, I have a fundamental issue with us allowing one one place in which Bitcoiners hang out be where we determine some sort of consensus layer of Bitcoin outside of the mechanism that Bitcoin uses. If a transaction is valid and you can use Bitcoin in that way to do a valid transaction, like that is Bitcoin. And if we don't want it to work like that, hold on. If we don't want it to work like that, we should change Bitcoin to not have it work like that. Like we should have that debate and that dialogue, and we should do the work to resolve and settle that dispute in a way that the network then enforces. But like I probably can buy in that if inscriptions, 4 megabyte inscriptions were known that that was going to be possible, maybe there would be additional people that would have been against Taproot. But I don't know that with certainty. I mean, I can't. Like there's like it's kind of like these arguments. Some of these arguments remind me of some of the things that Big Blocker said when they were forking, like where they were trying to basically say, hey, look, this is what Satoshi meant when he wrote the white paper, and we're no longer abiding by these ideas that Satoshi meant when he said that this was peer-to-peer, electronic cash. Roger's favorite thing to say, and it's like now we're talking about adding rules where if people want to build an altcoin and fork Bitcoin and implement those rules without getting consensus for those rules, they're welcome to do it. But that's not Bitcoin. That's Bitcoin from somebody else's perspective.
Yeah,
On top of it.
that's kind of like going another part of the conversation. I think like you gotta if you accept the idea that Bitcoin can be like a religion, and you accept the idea that Bitcoin is used to be money, like it's a store of value, method of exchange. Everybody should use Bitcoin to protect themselves against the Ponzi scheme that is the regular banking system and all the unethical grifting that the Wall Street promotes on people. You can kind of get to the point pretty easily that like Bitcoin maximalists will defend the idea that we got to promote like Bitcoin to the world as money and that you should build other things in layers. Then you can easily get to the point where you can see how people will defend use the free market, like the social consensus layer, I guess I'm talking about, and that we're talking about is really just the free market. There's nothing you can do to fork out this use case of Bitcoin except for get Bitcoin to be more popular so that it's too expensive to do graffitiing the Bitcoin blockchain. So we're not going to change Bitcoin to like get rid of inscribing, because it's just, it's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to get to a point where there'll be a soft fork to fix ordinals and inscriptions. But I think it just might turn out that the proper way to do this with digital art and stuff like that is other layers, and people who were promoting like inscriptions and ordinals, which turns out to be the inefficient non-Bitcoin way to do it, like in terms of social consensus for free market stuff, might just suffer some like dings and bruises and stuff like that, because you're like, why did you promote this thing when like in 6 months we've got Taro and like all that's possible in Taro, you know what I mean?
So to speak to that, I mean, I'm here for Taro. I'm here for RGB protocol. Like, we haven't picked like ordinals as the way that things are going to get done, and now we're all in on ordinals. Like that,
right.
that never happened. In fact, we're not even endorsing ordinals. Like we're endorsing people using Bitcoin in innovative and new ways. That's what we're endorsing. And I'm all about RGB protocol, and I'm all about this happening in layers. So I think that I have a perfect example of something that I personally don't love. I personally don't love stablecoins. I think stablecoins are not a positive thing for Bitcoin, and kind of fly in the face of why we made Bitcoin to begin with. Like it's political money. So, but I'm not going to try to censor or advocate against Taro because Taro is enabling USDC on the Lightning Network. Like I'm going to go to bat for Taro to be able, if they can build it, go try to make it happen in the world, and show the world the merits of it. And maybe I'm wrong about thinking stablecoins are negative on Bitcoin, but I think that when we look at many different nuanced topics that exist in this space, you're going to start finding fault lines in many debates on many topics. There are people who, like you said, hey, you added the layers element to this discussion. Okay, great. I totally agree. Things are going to end up getting built on layers. Okay, well, there are people who think fundamentally RGB protocol is a shitcoin protocol. That RGB is a place is a tool to create shit coins, and like it doesn't bring value to Bitcoin. Like there are many ways you can start slicing and debating different issues. Where now all of a sudden you get into everyone needing to have an opinion on everything for people to go work on shit. Like I don't think that long term that is a healthy place for us as a community to be, for like for us having to slice and dice every technical innovation or every niche community that wants to go do stuff with Bitcoin. It's like, let all of them go forth and try to thrive. Let the ones that actually have demand survive. The ones that don't, they'll die and wither on the vine. That is,
Right.
I think, a long-term perspective on how Bitcoin builds itself. And we're 13 years in, and we can find like 20 different topics to fucking argue about on Bitcoin. Wait until we're 200 years in, how many things we're gonna have to debate and argue about. So, I'm trying to find a intellectually consistent perspective to have that I can apply equally to all new innovations, all new
Mhm.
layers, etc. And
That's why I bring it back to like the sort of like the ethical and the like the should we do this? Like, is this something that is good for Bitcoin? And just generally, does it open you up to reputation risk, ethical risk, or whatever? Because like I said, man, like I got a few ordinals. I'm kind of a collector of stuff. So I'm not like a NFT fan really, because I think a lot of it has been corrupted by get rich quick charlatans that are just building cults and convincing people to buy their garbage, the digital tulips. And of course, when that gets turned on in Bitcoin with inscriptions and then with ordinals, you're going to get people coming over, being excited, wanting to make money on Bitcoin. So you got a million JPEGs on Bitcoin now that are mostly garbage. It's not actually about digital art. It's not actually about like use cases,
yep.
but that'll flush itself out eventually. And we will, like, the truth is that like digital art matters. Digital collectibles and digital game items is a real thing. It's never going away.
And
It's not like,
that's just one application of color coins. I mean, like you go read old Bitcoin talk threads on color coins, and it's like asset issuance could happen on color coins. Bit
yeah,
DNS could happen on color coins. There's all sorts. Who knows how people
that's just
want
why
are
I
going to want
think
to use
though,
color
like
coins.
it should be built out in layers, because that's how consensus of like how we scale Bitcoin should be. I mean, and it is happening. It's just there's this window of time where the layers aren't ready yet quite, or they're not being used the way that Liquid Network honestly probably should be used for all this stuff. I mean, technically it's awesome. It's more private. It's faster. It's just
So
that it's
just to
go
push
ahead.
back on that a little bit, and not to push back. I mean, I agree. Like people should be experimenting with this stuff, but actually, at Bitcoin 2021, we did an NFT. Like so many artists wanted to do NFTs, and they wanted to do them on Ethereum at the conference, and we said no. If it's on anything other than Bitcoin, it can't be at the conference. And so the compromise that we found with artists is like, hey, Blockstream has this great platform they've built. Rare Toshi, you can issue
Right.
assets, creative assets on top of the Liquid network, and there you go. If you want to do an NFT, do it on Rare Toshi. Well, there was all sorts of friction that was created for people to use Rare Toshi, and then if they wanted to buy the NFTs, they had to actually bid on the NFTs using Liquid Bitcoin. And to
Yeah.
get Liquid Bitcoin, you have to go
You
through
got to peg in.
you got to peg in. And then, like, all of a sudden, it's like it was such a bad user experience for people that no one
Yeah.
wanted to use them. And so
But
now we
dude, that's a
also,
that's a problem with the fact that there's not been enough attention towards Liquid. It's not a technical issue as much as it's just there's way more money that got spent building infrastructure for shitcoin chains to do minting and stuff like that. But I totally agree. It's a little bit confusing to if you're sort of coming in to NFTs in general, like downloading a MetaMask and finding the token IDs and figuring out how to connect to sites. All of the user experience of this stuff sucks, but
yeah.
they've got tons of money and FOMO around. It's not anymore, but there was tons of FOMO around how you can make a 30x buying a JPEG on Ethereum and flipping it on OpenSea. So people put tons of money into that user experience there. I think like technically it's all possible. And over the last couple of years, there's been some advancements. They're still making advancements on it. Like one of the things I'm kind of excited for Liquid coming up is that they're going to change the way that if you just want to use Liquid Network to hold stable coins, say, to hold Tether and, pay for a coffee, whatever. You currently need to pay for the gas in LBTC, which is another user experience problem. If you just want to download a wallet, someone send you $5 in Tether if you're in Nigeria or something like that, you're going to have to get liquid Bitcoin first to spend for the gas. But they're changing it in a way so that you can pay for the transaction with the token, the native, like whatever it is. So like now you won't have that. But I totally agree that there's not enough sort of infrastructure that got built out on Bitcoin layers generally. But we're starting to see it now.
And I think there's
The
a natural
bridges
dynamic,
and things like that.
like the Lightning Network didn't get built until there was congestion on Bitcoin mainnet. Like there was a dynamic relationship between the fees going up and then the pressure that created to create an alternative solution.
Totally.
And so I think it can be the same with all these other things. Like maybe RGB protocol doesn't have a lot of developers on it until these NFT developers who show up realize, fuck, it's too expensive to do NFTs. How I want to do them on the mainnet, and so I'm gonna convert to RGB protocol as my solution. And so I there's the incentives of the system, they're complex. How things tie together, how things feed off each other, they're complex. And so it's like, to me, the battle to be won is like getting people on Bitcoin. All things are good for Bitcoin. So just get people on Bitcoin. And then the natural dynamic of the system will then drive people to the appropriate places within the network of where they should be spending their time. And
I
then
think you're right there.
and
I
so
think oh, go ahead.
well, yeah. So I mean, I take very much a perspective. Like, there's some that this is a temple, and don't allow graffiti on the walls of the temple. I'm much more of this thing is an anti-fragile system that is just getting stronger and more robust every day. Let the barbarians into the temple, let the heathens in, and they're not going to break anything, and then maybe they get civilized. So.
That's a funny analogy. I love it.
So
Well, I kind of agree with you as well. It's just like I was thinking about it from the perspective of like a game theory choice for you personally and for Bitcoin Magazine. It's probably not the smartest choice for your own sanity and your time DDoSing that you put
well,
yourself in these
I
battles with the barbarians. Like, why don't you just let
I agree.
someone else
So
fight that,
I agree in the sense of I am definitely the type of person who, if a mob tries to get to do something, I will double fucking down. It's just
Oh,
who
I
I
can
am.
tell.
So, but and I don't know if you saw, we actually we just minted an inscription yesterday. We created the biggest block ever. I believe we have the record, and we put the new Bitcoin Magazine cover. We revealed it in a 4 MB block, which I think is the first magazine reveal ever. And it's the reveal of the Gatekeepers issue of the magazine with Julian Assange, which I think is has some poetry to it. But it cost us, I think, $15,000 roughly to do, but we did it, and we sent a message that we're gonna keep playing with the technology that's Bitcoin in all sorts of different ways. We don't want this to be a distraction in the sense that inscriptions and ordinals are 1% of what we spend our time on. I mean, it's yeah,
Yeah,
we had a lot of
and,
shit going on, and this is just like one little
and
sliver. So
dude,
we don't
like
want it to be
that 1% of what you spend your time, it's probably not even that. It's probably 0.5 or 0.1% really, because you guys do
0.1%. Yeah,
so much. It's like
yeah, yeah.
0.1%, but the
The past week it's
reputational
been
brand,
25%. Yeah.
like the brand impact, the negative impact to that 0.1% is bigger. It's much bigger. It's like probably
Oh yeah.
10%. You know, so it's like
Oh,
not a good risk reward ratio, I don't think, to be taking the like, obviously, like that message that you send out, sure, like it's a political message using the inscription in a way that's not a pump and dump type of thing. You're just actually inscribing the image. It's a political statement. So I just think that, like, you're gonna always have um people that just don't get it. There's going to be left curvers all the time that are like, NFTs bad, inscriptions are NFTs scam. That they're just not going to get the nuance and like the difference between a pump and dump and something unethical, something ethical. And then you have it on the other side too. You have all these really like kind of left curver hustlers coming over from crypto just trying to make a quick buck. So it's like two opposite ends of the spectrum are mashing, and like you probably shouldn't put yourself in the middle of that.
so like I hear the wisdom of what you're trying to say. Like what all I can say is that you know when we made the decision to go Bitcoin only, we made that decision. The brand that we are quote hurting or risking with this decision is a brand that we built by following our instincts and our gut and our worldview about what Bitcoin is about. And that's the same instincts and worldview that we're using to make the decision to support ordinals and support RGB protocol and to support all the other things we're going to support.
Totally.
And it's not purely an editorial decision. We're not an editorial company. We're an advocacy company. We advocate for Bitcoin.
Hmm.
We're not just objective people sitting on the sidelines like, oh, is Bitcoin good or bad? It's like, no, Bitcoin's fucking fantastic. Okay, we're gonna tell you 1,000 ways Bitcoin's fantastic, but we have an agenda. So but like, I hope that the reputation that we build in time, over time, as we go into this new epoch, is that Bitcoin Magazine is not an echo chamber. Like Bitcoin Magazine is not here to sell orange juice to people who love orange coin good and to make money on that. That's not what we're here for. Like we're here to push the boundaries of Bitcoin and to push Bitcoin adoption in all directions. And when that's an easy choice, we're going to do it. And when that's a hard choice, we're going to do it. And I hope that that builds us credibility and respect in time that, we are not a one-dimensional organization, and like it's definitely we feel the damage now. I mean, I feel like the safe thing to do is to not do what we're doing, and the safe thing to do is to like stick with the approved message that's out there. But you know, I don't want. I'm not here to do the safe thing.
I
I'm
don't
here
think
to
it's that,
do.
man. I think it's more so like you can do whatever you want, and covering ordinals is wise. There's a lot of people that want to know about it. It's just, what I guess the thing that I would hate to see happen would be that because you're getting attacked, you feel like there is a problem of gatekeeping, and that
Well,
becomes something that you focus on,
there
because
is a
that is
problem
an
with
echo
gate.
chamber. Like that
Yeah.
that
So
that that is an echo chamber that happens to all the people that get attacked by the Bitcoin swarm. They start thinking that, oh, the Bitcoin maximalists are trying to censor and they're blah blah blah. Like that's like the tiniest percentage of Bitcoiners are like that. And so the same way that you recognize that they're the tiniest percentage of Bitcoiners and they shouldn't dictate what you do as a company, people like Nick Carter and all these people that end up like
yeah,
getting
yeah.
attacked by Bitcoiners, they start to focus on like, oh, I'm getting attacked. Oh, the Bitcoin maxis are this or that. When really it's just the same thing. It's like Robert Breedlove handled it really well, actually. He got destroyed online. Like, they tried to, but he just ignored it all. And like he wrote a kind of blog post about the BitClout thing, which was kind of a little bit of a whiny thing. He probably shouldn't have done, like said certain things in certain ways, but he just continued doing what he was doing, and he's created one of the coolest like most awesome shows in Bitcoin. And there's still a small minority of people that are like, oh yeah, we destroyed Robert Breedlove. He's been crucified. And we're like, what world are you living in? Like, Breedlove is not even thinking about you. He doesn't give a shit about you. So that's it. You never hear
Proof of
Robert
work,
Breedlove
baby.
say,
Proof of work.
and the thing that I like the best about the way he handled it is you never hear him say anything bad about Bitcoiners. He never says like
Yeah.
they're trying to stop me, they're trying to censor me, they're gatekeeping. He doesn't say any of that stuff. And that way he's able to continually build a reputation based on what he does, and not get into that trap that like Nick Carter and Udi and Eric Wall and all these others have gotten
Yeah.
into, where they start to
Yeah.
focus on the negative things of what's being happening to them.
Yeah, so I'll just say like you have nothing to worry about in terms of like us
Good.
getting soured on Bitcoiners. I mean, dude, I've been in Bitcoin a long time. I cut my teeth on the Bitcoin talk forums. I know what fucking toxicity is. These people think that they're toxic. They've seen nothing. All right, like and you know, from that perspective, like I'm a Bitcoin pleb. I'm an original Bitcoin pleb. You know, I started when I in this business when I had nothing to my name basically, and you know, I've stacked sats to where I am. So I respect people being on their journey. I love the Bitcoin community, and you know, it doesn't matter how annoyed people get with me. I ain't going nowhere. All right, so it's like, you know, I mean, so I hear your message though, and you know, I will say like I am a little bit worried about gatekeeping happening because I hear it from people like developers who feel like they can't get anyone to spend any time on their BIP, and they don't know why. You know, it just they feel like they're not in the club. You know, I hear it from CEOs of Bitcoin companies that people love who feel afraid to tweet certain things or to weigh in on certain topics because they don't want to see their brand attacked. You know, I do hear frequently from people about fears of certain things that you know, I think are silly, and I think that, you know, we need to have courage and intellectually consistent views in our industry where we can talk about stuff and we can debate stuff and we can fight stuff out and not have it lead to, you know, something insane. And so like I don't want to fall subject to groupthink. I don't want to fall
Mm-hmm.
subject to making decisions based on fear. And so like I'm not going to, but I absolutely do will never paint the Bitcoin community with a broad brush. And you know, like I was on a Spaces the other day, and people were like, "These Bitcoin, you're upsetting these laser-eyed Bitcoin maxis. They must be seething." Like my profile pic is like laser eyes. You know, on the Twitter Spaces, I'm like, okay, there is no such thing as a laser-eyed Bitcoin maxi. Like it's many different people who love Bitcoin for many different reasons and have many different views. So I hear you loud and clear on that. But all I can do is be me and to follow, you know, my instincts, and you know, to do everything I can to advance and push Bitcoin forward. And my commitment is that that's what we're gonna do. And you know, like I'm excited to do stuff on RGB protocol, and I hope that there's as much seething about RGB protocol when we do that as there is with orders. But like you know, let it all bloom. Let's see what thrives. Let's see what survives. And yeah, let's battle hard in Bitcoin as many ways as we possibly can.
Well, it sounds like you've got a good perspective on things, and you'll probably you got the tool to fight the final boss battle. The final boss in Bitcoin is you, David Bailey. But
No, I will say, like, you know, if there are people who don't agree with the perspective that I have or the message that I have, and they're sitting there saying, "Dude, like, what your views are a joke," and you know, the Bitcoin community doesn't want to hear it. My challenge to you is, great, set up a website, start a media company, start creating content for the Bitcoin community, start evangelizing Bitcoin content, start a conference, start an event, start a meetup,
Yeah.
compete with us. And guess
Hmm.
what? At the end of the day, Bitcoin will be better for it. If you come and
Exactly.
crush us, Bitcoin will be better for it.
Yeah.
And I won't hold
And
it
you got
nothing
enough,
against you
you
in any
got enough
way.
Bitcoin that's going to be
No,
just fine.
it's, honestly, the amount of brain damage I go through, if someone can come and do a better job than we can and I don't have to suffer the brain damage, dude, I am here for it. I will be your first check into your company. So I value people's feedback, and I am, in a roundabout way, I am honored by people being so upset about, us doing something they think that's inconsistent with our brand, because it means that people are invested in our brand, and
Yeah.
that they hold our brand to a really high standard, and I respect that and I appreciate that, and I'm doing my best to try to honor that. But um, again, it's challenging to make all people happy, and so at the end of the day, just you gotta do what's right to you.
So, David, we've been going for an hour and 45 minutes
Yeah,
already,
yeah,
and we didn't even get
yeah.
to talk about GBTC. I don't know if you want to put that on another chat or you want to hit it now or
Yeah,
what?
so I'll hit it quickly, but it's probably worthy of another discussion sometime too. But
Yeah.
um, you know, I will say that there's a lot of things that we get wrong. There's a lot of introspection that I've had over the past year. I do think that there are things that we get wrong at the conference in terms of providing leadership around how the industry should work. And, I think that we fall flat on promoting self custody and privacy and things that really matter to Bitcoin that just do not get the attention and resources and dedication that it deserves. And so, with FTX failing, and the amount of catastrophe that has happened in our industry, there was a lot of people that saw red flags, that knew that there were issues, or saw things and didn't speak up more or didn't say things because they were worried about blowback. And uh, I feel like we can't fall victim to that. Like, we have to do a better job of policing ourselves. So um, the like Grayscale is something where I'm an investor in GBTC. I've lost a good amount of money. I didn't understand all the facts of the situation or what was going on, but as I found them out, I felt like what had happened at Grayscale moved into a category that was similar to what happened at FTX. And so we started a campaign called Redeem GBTC. We've heard from almost 4,000 investors, representing over 30% of the shares of Grayscale, um, uh, that want to see a variety of things achieved: a reduction in fees, transparency from Grayscale about conflicts of interest and intercompany transactions, credible path to redemption of the trust, and those things not being met, a change in management of the trust if it's going to continue to operate as a vehicle. We have spent a lot of time working on these goals. We announced last week that our first primary focus is on educating shareholders on a complaint that was filed by Alameda, run by the bankruptcy estate, John Ray, who's running FTX, against Grayscale, specifically around Grayscale's breach of contract to not monitor and renegotiate fees, such that shareholders of the trust were getting the most competitive pricing possible for the services that were rendered. The complaint outlines perhaps as much as $1.5 billion that was charged to shareholders in excess of what should have been charged,
Crazy.
and is seeking clawbacks for that money, as well as the courts to enforce a new fee that actually is competitive, which is dramatically lower than what it is now. So we are rallying shareholders to join that action. Please sign up on redeemgbtc.com. Just give us your email address, how many shares you have. For shareholders that have more than 250,000 shares, we want to have a one-on-one discussion with you about what this lawsuit is all about, what impact it could have, why you need to be a part of it. We are actively driving that forward with the full focus and energy as that action comes to a head. I think it kind of sees court for the first time in about 30 days. And so we're having as many conversations as we possibly can.
So are you guys, is this something that you're working with somebody else on, or is this something you're taking on by yourself? Like, how's this?
Which part?
Redeem BTC or redeem, what is it? Redeem GBTC or
GBTC, yeah,
redeemgbtc.com?
yeah. So, we made the investment through our hedge fund, UTXO Management. We stood up the website just because once we started talking about this, we had so many inbounds and DMs, et cetera. It was like, okay, we just need to like automate a system for hearing from people. And this thing has like taken a life of its own. And so we are driving it forward. But there are dozens of institutions, huge institutions that have massive stakes in what's going to happen at GBTC that are each pushing forward their own legal strategy, have their own, research and approach that they've taken on. And so we've really served but all of them have been working in a silo because no one knew who any of the other shareholders are, et cetera. So when we kind of raised this flag, we became an essential repository of who all the different players are, their strategies, what they need to be successful in their approach. And we are connecting dots, sharing communication, and really helping just push forward all these different efforts and energy to ultimately get this trust redeemed. People don't realize that GBTC is the world's largest holding of Bitcoin. It's 3.3% of the world's Bitcoin supply. It's several times bigger than Mt. Gox. It's bigger than FTX. It's 630,000 Bitcoins that are currently sitting in there. And shareholders are down about 250-ish thousand Bitcoins in value in that trust right now. So it's a huge issue. It impacts over roughly 1 million shareholders. It's a bad situation. And I could go into way more depth. There's a lot of interplay between Grayscale, Genesis, some of the fraud that was being committed by the Three Arrows and the BlockFis of the world, et cetera.
Did you ever look into the thing where Genesis Asia took $1 billion of UST in exchange for Bitcoin back in May, June of last year?
For Luna?
Yeah.
So we haven't dug into that issue yet.
This is one of the crazier stories of the whole Genesis, Barry's empire. Like the fact that they took, and it wasn't just facilitating an OTC trade for UST, for Luna's stablecoin. They actually announced it as they took on $1 billion worth of UST in exchange for Bitcoin. So they didn't just they're an OTC, trading desk, but they also took positions. And so they took on this massive position, which went to zero. So I don't know if they ended up getting out of that, but I'd love to hear.
That they made money shorting. So,
but there's multiple entities, right? There's Genesis Trading, Genesis Asia. So I think there could be something where they've kind of swept under the rug that they were left holding the bag on $1 billion of UST in one of the divisions that, because it was some other name, they didn't really, oh yeah, look, in Genesis Trading, we made money shorting. But meanwhile, they lost $1 billion on the exposure to the thing.
At Genesis, there was so much stuff going on that shouldn't have been going on. I mean, multiple crimes being committed at multiple different entities, different types of crimes. I can tell you that the thing that I think is most disturbing is that, at Genesis, they were providing financing to firms who entered into the Grayscale trade. And they were allowing them to use the shares that they got through that process as collateral in violation of the restrictions that are placed around those shares until they season, which takes about 6 months. And the people that they were doing that trade with were Alameda, Three Arrows, Babel Finance, Celsius, Voyager.
Crazy.
All the firms that blew up were in doing that trade. And the amount of Bitcoin that got transferred from Genesis into Grayscale during that period of time, in about a 1.5 year period, is north of 300,000 Bitcoins. So they basically had their users at Genesis deposit money into Genesis to get yield. They've lent the money that they got from those depositors to Ponzi schemes. They allowed those Ponzi schemes to then park that money in the form of Bitcoin in their trust so that it can never leave.
Crazy.
And then when the Ponzi schemes blew up, they just blew up Genesis and they said, hey, your money's gone. Well, actually, their money's in Grayscale. That's where their money went. The Bitcoin, all the stuff that was taken from the depositors, that just got cycled through these cutouts right into Barry's fund, and he's sitting on the Bitcoin right now. And it's just like he's paying himself 2% per year in perpetuity. And it's kind of like, yeah, sorry, these are disconnected entities. They're not related in any way. Sorry what happened to you at Genesis. And it's like, meanwhile, the only reason that money was taken out is because they financed it so that it could be put into Grayscale. So it's a fucking disaster what's gone on there, and it's got to go.
That's
Barry funded a lot of these Ponzi schemes. Genesis
was
the source of funding.
Grayscale also did a lot of unethical stuff, and they're still doing it. But back in 2021, when they started launching all these shitcoin trusts, like the Mana Trust and the Zcash Trust and the Ethereum Classic, the Ethereum Trust, they did it in a way that fooled dumb money into thinking that they were getting a discount on buying the asset. So they launched the ETH Trust at $80 when Ethereum was trading at $100. So they structured these trusts in a way that the private, the pre-sale investors of things like Mana and whatever coin, like Cardano, everything, they can buy into the private placement of the trust at whatever the value was. But then the trust is priced in a way so the private money gets in at their par value, right? And then the shares are priced in a way that makes it seem cheap for retail. So they think, oh, well, I'm getting Ethereum at $80 because the ETH trust is $80. Ethereum's at 100. I'm going to buy these ETH shares at a discount. Meanwhile, it's actually a 10x markup. So all these pre-sale buyers, they just did this recently with another one. I can't remember what it was. Solana, yeah. They're basically dumping their pre-sale bags at inflated prices on dumb retail that doesn't understand the pricing of the difference between the trust.
If you see also that also the people that get in on the pre-sale, they get fucked too, because if you look at the trusts, you said Ethereum Classic, Mana. Okay, go look at who the biggest creditors are at Genesis. It's the founding team of Decentraland that are the biggest creditors to Genesis. It's the biggest backer of Ethereum Classic, who's out 50 million or 80 million at Genesis.
So how did that happen? How did they lose money?
Because it's very clear to me that Barry made these deals that, hey, we'll stand up a trust, which is going to pump all this liquidity into your token, as long as you park all the Bitcoin you're going to make with us at Genesis.
Shit. Okay.
And so it was kind of like, hey,
the flywheel.
It's the flywheel. Yeah, flywheel. The classic flywheel. Flywheel right to your death. And so, all these guys that should have, quote, made out on getting these trusts stood up, they actually are going to get not shit. They have a bankruptcy claim. That's what they're getting. And,
so they probably made a bunch of money on the shitcoin trust, but then they were putting their Bitcoin in with Barry, and then that got wrecked.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they were tied together. I'm sure it was, if you want us to do the trust, you
have
to park your
do
Bitcoin
this,
with us. Just like how Sam
FTX
Yeah,
made the people put their money at the FTX
yeah.
exchange.
I'm gonna be $100 million LP in your venture fund, but you need to put the entire venture fund
Yeah,
park it at our exchange. So, dude, I'm telling you, Sam just
nuts.
copied Barry's business model and was sloppier about it. Barry's was much more polished.
What a shame, man. Barry could have been such a good network effect for Bitcoin, but the money was too great to go down the path of Ponzi's and shitcoin trusts and all that stuff. And yeah,
Yep,
that sucks.
yep.
Could have been the chosen one, but
Could have been.
thankfully we've got David Bailey and
Instead,
Jack Dorsey and all these other guys picking up the slack.
he turned into Sauron, man. It's like
Yeah.
the ring of power corrupts all.
So lastly, before we end this up, you were very early on warning about Signature Bank and Silvergate Bank and some of these crypto banks, talking about how the contagion from FTX and Three Arrows and all this was potentially going to spill over into the real banks, and you ended up being right on those calls. So like, what do you make of the people
Got
that
a
are
lot of
like,
pushback on those when I said
oh,
them, but
totally.
yeah,
People thought
yeah,
you were crazy. I was
yep,
like, David's probably right because I was looking at that too. Me and you were kind of in the same threads at the time, calling different things were going to blow up, and I never made the connection to Silvergate and Signature, but you did. And do you think that the people now that are in the crypto industry that are kind of biased by all their Ponzi schemes blowing up and the negative effects to liquidity of Silvergate and Signature Bank blowing up, saying that this is actually like the government against crypto? It's there was nothing wrong with Silvergate and Signature, and it's just like the regulators are trying to shut down the crypto banking? Or do you think that there's anything to that really? Or is it just that like they actually, because you were calling this way before people were talking about Operation Choke Point 2.0 or any of that. Do you think they're just
yeah.
biased, or do you think there's like, what do you think happened there? And
I
what do you
definitely
think's
think,
coming?
yeah, I definitely think there's some bias. I mean, uh, I know enough to know that like the Biden administration broadly does not like our industry. That there are a lot of people within the Democratic Party who don't like our industry. And when I say our industry, I'm using that as a broad term: Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain, the whole. They see it all as one. And I'm sure that given like the opportunity to drive a knife, like they would take that opportunity. So like I don't want to carry water for the administration or say any of that stuff's not happening. Um, the issues that affected Silvergate and Signature are much bigger than some government operation that was ongoing. That's the reason why I was able to see it so early, is because of these were big things that happened that these firms were already being affected by, and then like FTX blowing up accelerated things. That's Silvergate a lot. Signature, I thought Signature was in trouble way before FTX happened. And so, like, these are things that are happening because of the monetary policy. It's not just exclusive to crypto funds or crypto banks, but they're at the kind of the bleeding edge of it because that's where the hot money went. Like any place where money flowed in 2020 in a big way are like the most vulnerable places. So like real estate banks, crypto
Mm.
banks, tech banks, all of those banks are really suffering right now. And yeah, I don't think the government. In fact, if anything, the government bailed out the crypto industry
Yeah.
because like Signature had gone under, it would have taken down 50% of
Oh,
all the crypto
Circle,
firms.
the USDC would have been probably 20 cents by now.
Circle, I mean, literally, they bank like 1,500 or 2,000 plus crypto firms. They bank
That's so
hundreds of
funny,
exchanges.
dude. Like it literally is like Ethereum and the crypto complex got bailed out by the taxpayers, but like they're complaining about Operation Choke Point 2.0. I'm like so frustrated.
Dude, it's so ironic. It's just like, yeah, like if they really wanted to like throw the dagger in, they would have just not bailed out Signature and then
Totally.
boom, they just bankrupted.
Or
Like,
they would have just said like, well, sorry, Circle, we're not bailing out your stable coin because it's a threat to the US dollar, blah, blah, blah. They bailed everything out. They bailed out all
yeah,
the shitcoin Ponzi bank accounts. They bailed out
yeah.
Circle's bank accounts. So
So
yeah, it's a little,
I think it's to your point earlier. I think it's definitely cope. Like it's like
yeah,
people wanting to be constantly the victim, and crypto has done nothing wrong. This is an attack by regulators. When
yeah,
in fact, like okay, you were hot money in, and now the hot money's out, and you brought a bank down with you while that happened, and like it's not crypto's fault per se any more than it's real estate's fault for booming and busting, but
hmm,
that's what happened. And in terms of what happens next, um,
yeah. I'm
this
curious. You guys have the Bitcoin Magazine Pro, right? Where Dylan LeClaire and some of the other guys put out research or just
yeah,
like white papers or whatever. I read one of
exactly.
them yesterday. It was written in March. It was about the banking collapse. I downloaded it and I was like, oh, 34 pages. I'm like, maybe I'll get to that sometime. But I read it last night. It's actually really good. Do you guys have like a team now covering the banking collapse, or like how's that?
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
see?
So, Dylan is head of research for us, and has a team. They do a great job. They kind of go topic to topic of what people are interested in. So they're still trying to respond to appetite for certain topics. But um, yeah, it's gotten more complex and signatures failing because now there's so much government liquidity that's being provided in different programs and vehicles in order to stem what happened from happening again. It hasn't solved any foundational challenge, which is effectively like money is fleeing low interest rates and going to high interest rates, so money market accounts and U.S. Treasuries. And so that depositor flight is still ongoing and it's still a problem. But the bank failures should be slowed down as long as banks can get liquidity against the assets that they're holding that are typically illiquid, but now because of these liquidity programs, they can borrow against them. It fundamentally though will take years for the variable rate loan books that banks have to catch up with the interest rate that is being offered by U.S. Treasuries if they stay at where they're at. And so either Treasury rates are going to have to come down, or banks are going to have to survive years of depositor flight, and they
Yeah.
can't. So these two things are at a head, and my guess is that you're going to see the interest rates, the Fed funds rate, brought down by the end of this year significantly in order to try to stem that bleeding. But then there's no free lunch, so that kicks off another set of kind of costs that will affect the market, where banks flipped from fixed rate interest rates to variable rate interest rates to try to get a higher yield on their portfolio. But once the Fed funds rate drops, okay, well now all of their variable rate stuff that they just loaded up on is going to drop with it, and so they should have really actually be buying fixed rate shit right now. So it's kind of just the classic dynamic of like central bankers, the only decisions that they can make are the wrong ones, and yeah, I think we're like heading into I mean, effectively the socialization of all banking is what's just occurred. And I think that the next financial catastrophe that we have, monetary crisis that we have, the '08 type event, is going to be one that's going to fundamentally break our monetary markets and financial markets permanently. So I don't know how long it'll take to unfold, but when it does, like they've now brought so much risk, consolidated
Mhm.
so much risk that when the next run on the banks happens, it's going to be a global run on all the banks simultaneously. And, no amount of liquidity is going to solve the issue without fundamentally breaking people's confidence in the system.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I've been looking at it too lately. It might be 2 years from now, it might be 6 months from now, it might be 10 years. Like they may be able to just print another 20 trillion slowly and keep everybody's eyes closed. But as inflation continues to heat up and rates really punish people, and then it starts to transition into like companies starting to feel the crunch, and we get into a recession and things like that, the response from the government's always going to be the same. As long as they can, they're going to try to stop the crisis and print and socialize everything. So the one thing for sure that we can say for certainty is that your dollars are going to lose value over time. Your purchasing power, your savings is going to be debased. So this is like, it's been great to see that Bitcoin has started to be coming up in the conversation, even though a lot of the macro folks are super resistant to talk about Bitcoin as an alternative or even at all. Like it's triggering to them that like Bitcoin is helping and is something that they should think about. So it's, I guess, just part of the process of Bitcoin bootstrapping. Like first they, fight, first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, and then they fight you, whatever. They're kind of at the point now transitioning from ignore to fight or maybe accept, but
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
relevant,
it's what a transformation it's made. I mean, the best corollary in Bitcoin's history is the Cyprus event, the bail-ins that happened. And if you just compare the 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 credibility, the accessibility, the adoption base, the the actual viability of Bitcoin now versus then, it's like only been 10 years, and
Mm.
it's orders and orders of magnitude. Like we are a real thing in the like we're
Yeah.
occupying so many people's minds right now, like rent free, and versus like what we were able to do in 2013. And Bitcoin can't be denied anymore. Like its moment has come, and it's got a lot of growing to do, and a lot of it has a lot to improve upon. But like we have entered into the minds of every central banker, and every financial operator globally, and when the time comes, like we will be ready.
Amazing. That's a perfect spot to end it. Thanks very much, man. We got a couple of links there. We'll put in the show notes for people where they can find you. And what do you think? You got so much going on. Like, where do you want people to follow you or find you? I guess I'll ask you.
Follow me on Twitter or meet me in person in Meet Space in real life at the Bitcoin conference happening in Miami, May 18th through the 20th. It's going to be a bear market conference, but it's going to be one for the record books. And if you haven't been to Miami yet for the conference, maybe this might be your last time to do it. Who knows? So come to Miami, meet me in real life, and meet some of your fellow Bitcoiners, or follow me on Twitter at David F. Bailey. But Brad, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's been real.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right, we'll catch you later. Hey, and
Bye-bye.
Brad, keep doing everything that you're doing. Dude, again, just love the energy that you bring to Bitcoin and the support you bring to the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's Satoshi's work, and thank you for everything that you do.
Appreciate it. Thank you much, sir.
All
Thank
right,
you muchly. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Oh,